One, two. What?
What's up,
What's
everybody?
what's up? Hi, I'm Emmy Wildwood. Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I am your host today, along with the beautiful Erin Mars. I'm a musician, a songwriter, producer, art director, artiste, lots of
Yes.
things. And this is my gorgeous, phenomenal, cold in her room co-host, and that's why we're wearing beanies, Erin Mars.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Erin Mars, and I am a writer, director, musician. I play with Emmy and a bunch of other people, and I do a lot of other things. But let's focus on those things for today. And I'm very excited to be here with the beautiful and talented Emmy Wildwood for our part two in our series, which focuses on vampires. And today we are speaking about the new film Nosferatu. Let's jump in. Emmy, you saw it. Should I
I
start with some discussion about the film and then we can get opinions, or what are we thinking here?
Yeah, it's great.
So Nosferatu, which was released in 2024, was directed and the screenplay was written by Robert Eggers. Now, Robert is a writer-director who you might also know from some of his other work, The Witch, which came out in 2015, which is a
Oh, it's so
beautiful film,
scary.
very
Oh,
scary, really
yeah.
cool shots, and The Lighthouse, which he put out, I think, in 2019. So he
Also
definitely,
unsettling. Also
yes.
very unsettling.
Yes. So he definitely has like an aesthetic and a kind of look that he likes to play with. And I feel like his Nosferatu definitely brings in some of those elements that we are familiar with him as a director. He has some beautiful shots throughout the film, really plays with light and a lot of shadows that play into the tension and suspense within the film. Now, his film was based off of two other famous vampire films. Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. And that was a movie that came out in 1922. Now, that's the film we discussed last week, but for people who maybe missed that episode, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror was a silent film that came out in 1922 during the German Expressionist period by F.W. Murnau. And it was a screenplay by Henrik Galeen. It starred Max Schreck as Count Orlok, who is a vampire who preys on the wife of his estate agent, Gustav von Wegenheim, and brings the plague to their town. So
What?
that storyline is pretty much the storyline of this Nosferatu. Now, there are some elements from the other Dracula film, which is Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? There were certain shots in this Nosferatu film that were felt like little winks and nods to that one. The storyline is pretty much the original Nosferatu storyline based on exactly what I just talked about. And that's pretty much what happens here. We encounter the characters in the 1830s where young Ellen, she's pleading for supernatural being to ease her loneliness. That's the first meeting we have. Ellen is played by,
Lily Rose Depp
that's right, Lily Rose Depp, who is
and
the
Johnny.
daughter of Johnny Depp and Vanessa Paradis. So she is obviously gorgeous and comes from a very talented family. So she plays Ellen, and we see her in the first scene saying this prayer. It's the room's dark, there's beautiful lights, shadows, lots of grays. She's asking for something to ease her loneliness, and her cries awaken a mysterious creature who makes her pledge herself to him eternally. Yes.
That maybe is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, is the opening scene.
I mean, the opening scene is incredible. Yeah.
It is, it is, well, the shot itself is stunning, but
Mhm.
Lily Rose Depp does some pretty amazing acting in that moment where she is, I'm assuming, is sort of injected by the spirit of evil or of Count Orlok in that moment, and she is uncontrollably gyrating and shaking, sort of that imagery you might think of in The Exorcist if you've seen that movie, or
Yes,
yeah.
yes. It's like it's almost reminiscent of, a possession. Her
Yeah,
body is kind of
possession.
taken over with this other entity. So that's what we see in the beginning. We just see that, and then we move to the next scene, which is in 1838. So this is about 8 years later. Ellen is now married to Thomas Hutter. Thomas Hutter is played by Nicholas Holt.
Do you know
Um,
Nicholas Holt's career? Do you know his famous show he was in?
yes.
Skins.
Oh, Skins?
Yeah, like as a teenager.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did you watch Skins? It's a
No.
it was like a British drama that was like way ahead of its time. I'm trying to think of what it would be like, sort of like a maybe late 90s, early 2000s 90210. More like 90210. Maybe
Aha.
it was like
Okay.
2008-ish kind of vibes. Very
Okay.
inclusive show, shows a lot about all different people, religions, backgrounds, talks about sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
talks about sort of, oh, like Euphoria kind of, but British.
Okay.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
was really really forward, and he was amazing. He was played like a dick, but like sort
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
yeah,
the anti-hero. Yeah,
that's
cool.
right. But I love him. I've seen him in so
Wow.
many things, and he's so cute and it's fun. I was thinking right when I saw him, I was like, it is so cool to watch somebody like as they get older. This is one of the
Yes.
few pleasures. No, there's lots of pleasures of getting older, but one of them is watching the same stars you watch as a young person get better and better at their job and do more and more interesting roles and more adult roles, and it's fun to watch. We all kind of grow together. So
Yeah, absolutely.
sorry for that big interruption, but I just wanted to be like, I love him.
Yes, I love him too, but I know him from The Great, which is a show that I was loved, 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 and was so sad to hear that it got canceled, but loved that show.
I
So
haven't
that's how
seen
I knew
that.
him, and he was hilarious. He's just got this
Oh.
amazing comedic presence. His timing is great. He plays Ellen's husband, Thomas Hutter, and they live in Wisburg, Germany. So Thomas, this is a young couple and he's trying to make his way. And he is employed at this business. It seems like a real estate office kind of thing. And he's trying to, get money and get his feet on the ground. He's married and he wants to, start his life, so to speak, with his beautiful young wife. His employer, Herr Knock, says, "Hey, you know what? There's this amazing, lucrative commission for you. You're newly married. This is going to be great. You know that weird, creepy old house down the street, Grunwald Manor? Well, there's this count who lives far away, and he's kind of old school. He wants to sign the deed in person. You're going to have to go out to Transylvania. It's this great part of the country. You've never heard of it before, but it's this place. It's going to be cool. It will take you about 6 weeks to get there." And, Thomas is like, there's no way we could just, mail this to him, or he could come here and sign it right before he moves into the property. No, 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 no. He's really old school. He wants you to go there. Okay. And this
So
pretty much
it's,
starts the journey, right?
yeah, and this is kind of important though to say that he has just gotten married. They are newlyweds.
Yes.
And the boss sort of encourages him to go as a newlywed. He says, this will seal your fate if you get this commission. This will seal your fate at this company, and you'll be, you know,
Yeah,
well
absolutely.
compensated and all that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a reason for him that to like really push to go.
totally. Exactly. Exactly. So he tells Ellen, and she is just getting more and more prophetic dreams, and they're about death and her marrying death, and she is getting more upset as it's getting closer for him to leave, and she just begs him, please, please stay. I really have a bad feeling about this. I really don't want you to go. Please, please stay. And he's like, I can't stay. Like, we're newly married. We need money. We don't have that. We need to, get some grounding here. But don't worry, you're going to be staying with my best friend and his wife, Anna, who's also one of your best friends. So this is all going to be great. And you'll be with their two young daughters. What could happen? Like, he's rich. He's going to take care of you. It's not a big deal. I'll be back soon enough. So he leaves. Now, while he's gone, these prophetic dreams that Ellen keeps getting are getting more and more and more. And she becomes sick while he's gone. So Thomas, has left now and he is on his journey and meets locals as he gets closer and closer to Count Orlok's castle and is getting warned more and more and more. Absolutely, do not go there. Do
Yeah,
not go there. No one wants you to go there. We're not
and
going to let you stay here. We want nothing to do with this. Do not go there.
they're
Right?
like kind of laughing at him too. They're
Yeah.
like, "You fool."
Yeah. Like you have no idea what you're about to do.
Hmm.
So he also sees a kind of a moment of foreshadowing. And I think for people who are not familiar with vampire lore, but if you listen to the last episode, you will be. He sees some locals. They open up a coffin of someone who is newly dead. I think they chop off the head and they do a dagger through the body. The classic, let's kill the vampire kind of thing. And when they do the wood stake, the thing, stands up and they're like, and he's
What?
just, Thomas is so terrified. This is crazy. He doesn't understand it. He's like, what's going on? He wakes up back in his bed and he thinks, oh my God, that must have just been a really bad dream. And then he looks and his feet are dirty. He was outside that night. He did what he saw actually happened. He comes out of the inn, everybody's gone. So, and his horses are gone. So he makes his way up to the castle and eventually meets Orlok. Now, I feel like I'm not telling you anything that you wouldn't already know if you have seen Bram Stoker's Dracula. Very similar. And this is what Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu, was also based off of. The 1922 film was based off of Bram Stoker's book, which we talked about before, which I still have right next to me, right here. And
The worst cover. It's
um,
so scary.
so scary. And I love it so much. I love this
Yeah.
book. I think a lot of the things that get touched on in this version, which is again beautifully shot, the music really helps hold in the tension. You're just baited with what is going to happen because things start to plot around more and more and more and become more intense. And as these things keep getting more and more intense, there's two things simultaneously happening. One, we're seeing what's going on with Thomas and where he is now at Count Orloff's and having this very strange, very dark experience where he pretty quickly realizes this guy is not who he has said he was. He's a monster. He is a
Mhm.
monster and he is going to try to kill Thomas.
Mhm.
And then we have what's going on with Ellen, where she's getting more and more ill. And you think back to the 1800s, and if a woman is like, something's wrong with me, they'll be, oh, she's got too much blood. Let's bleed her. Let's do this. You start
Right.
seeing there's doctors coming in, they're doing all these things. There's all this talk of blood. Oh, the problem is she has too much blood. We have to get rid of some of her blood. That's why she's acting this way. That's why maybe she's having these seizures. And nothing is really helping, and nothing's really helping. And his friends who are watching Ellen are like, we don't know what to do. And the wife is getting more concerned. What can we do here?
By the way, what's hilarious
Yes.
about them bleeding people is
Yes.
specifically with women, you are to build the blood. They want you to build the blood now because it gives you more energy to sort of feed your organs and like a big healthy blood flow nourishes takes blood takes vitamins to all your organs to your skin and it
Yeah.
nourishes you. So it's like literally the opposite
Of
of the
course.
of the instincts.
Totally. And
And
we see,
especially in
yeah,
this
so we're
case, yeah.
exactly. And we're watching with a modern perspective. We know that's something you definitely
Yeah.
should not do to someone.
Yeah.
And as she's having these fits because her body is basically being overtaken by this other energy, as Count Orlok is like calling to her and has connected with her from in a spiritual way.
Hmm.
Um, she's becoming more and more upset. Like this is horrible. He's coming here. A really bad thing's going to happen. We need, and everyone's like, she's nuts. She's losing it. She's just scared. She's got this nervous personality. Something's really wrong with her. And
Mhm.
as it keeps going, we see finally this doctor is like, okay, I think something else is going on here. I have to bring in this other doctor, this professor who actually got kicked out of school because everybody said he's nutso. And he comes in and
Mhm.
he is von Franz. Okay.
Von
And von
Franz.
Franz, played by Willem Dafoe.
William
Willem
Dafoe.
Dafoe, A plus actor, right? And
He, he was in The Lighthouse
nails,
too.
yes, yes, yes.
Hmm.
And he just knocks this out of the park as the guy who goes, hey, I don't think what's happening is a physical issue with this woman. I think she's actually maybe having a possession. She's someone who is too open and people who are very open. And what he's really saying is she's psychically so open that other spirits and stuff will come on her to suck her energy. And she somehow has been so open since she was a child because she tells him when he's asking about her childhood, was there any, how was your childhood? And she said, my mother passed away when I was young. I was so lonely. I had this thing where I always knew if someone gave me a gift, what it was before I opened it. I knew my mother was going to die before she died. Like she knows all these things. She's psychic. They're
Hmm.
basically implying that
Yeah.
she's an intuitive, right? And so she's so open that these spirits or whatever they are, the darker energy wants to come towards her light. And that's very attractive. So that's part of the reason why she was such a light beam to Count Orlok, who was sleeping in his coffin for what's implied to be maybe 1,000 years or something that he's been chilling out. Now, Count Orlok
Been chilling out in his
chilling out.
coffin for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
He's
just,
chilling.
he's chilling. He's just taking a deep sleep. So, Count Orlok and the original Dracula were actually based off of what we got into very a little bit, the Prince of Wallachia, and
Mm.
his son was called who took over for him in the 1400s was Vlad II, also known as Dracul, which means the devil. And so people who knew him, and he later became Vlad the Impaler because he would fight and kill people and impale them as a warning to others that if you try to come over here, this is what's going to happen to you. He was known as this like horrible beast of a warrior. And so the stories that are historically true about this horrible dude who would do really crazy stuff are from history, and that's part of the background that kind of has been taken for our modern day Dracula, and in this case Count Orlok, right? So
Mhm.
he's this old warrior. You can see he's just like it's like you if you've ever seen like an earthworm that's like been run over by a car and then like
That's
kind of baked
exactly
in the
what it
sun
looked
too
like.
long and it's like crispy and not the right color and it's like and it's dead. That's
Yeah.
kind of basically what Count Orlok looks like. And
Hmm.
so he's got those kinds of vibes. So handsome, so disgusting.
No, I was like, is he real? I don't understand. Like, is he a person that's supposed to, he's just like a monster thing.
So let's go back to where we're talking about monsters, right?
Okay.
Monster movies and monsters in general and stories always represent the other. So
Uh-huh.
in a vampire film, he is representing, and you see this when he comes, he's foreign, he's
Hmm.
coming to another country, he has a very heavy accent. And what does he
Hmm.
bring with him as a foreigner?
The plague.
The plague.
Yes.
It's that foreign there's going to be death and destruction with the income of foreigners.
Mm. Right.
Okay. And so part of what was also happening, just big, I'm talking like super big picture here. Okay.
Yeah.
Like widen out and let's look historically. There was a
Yeah.
lot of things happening in the world at that time where people, by necessity, were having to immigrate to different places. But there was a lot of fear of that. in a lot of
Yeah.
different, circles and societies. Oh, there's all these people coming here. They don't even speak our language. They have these strange customs. Why are they coming to us? They're bringing us like, trouble. We still see that now. We can talk about even American politics. It's like build the wall, build the wall. It's all the same stuff, right? It's like this
Yeah.
fear of the other,
Hmm.
xenophobia. So, anyway, let's get back to this story. Thomas finally escapes Count Orlok's lair, his castle or whatever. He just jumps out of the building because he's like, this is never gonna. I'm gonna die. This guy's gonna kill me. I know he's a monster. He finds his coffin at one point.
Yeah, it takes him a while to believe that he's a monster. It takes him a while. Like he's sort of Orlok keeps convincing him to stay. Like I was getting a little annoyed, honestly. I was like, why? Like leave. Like who cares? This is crazy. Get out of there. Do you know what
Well,
I
yeah. Well,
mean?
also, I mean, it almost goes back to another film that we watched where it's like people are getting in trouble because of over politeness.
Yeah,
Like
like
they're getting every sign that this
that's
is a bad
right.
idea and they do it anyway because they're like, well, I guess this is what I just have to do. And I feel like so often that's very common with people in all different things in life, right?
Yeah,
He's got this new job, he's just married, this feels uncomfortable and weird, but he believes his boss, right? That guy,
that's
why
why I
would he
brought
lie
that
to
up.
him,
Yeah, that's why I brought it up too. The only reason he had to stay there. I kept trying to justify his choice. I was like, he's just trying to like do this thing for his boss and he doesn't want to blow it. And we all know how hard it is to come by work. I was like,
Yeah,
fine. But
like
like
I
the
get
things
it.
you'll do. Yeah. But
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah. And while he has been with Count Orlok told him, I need you to sign this document. It's in my language. I need you to sign it. And then our deal will be done. And, look, you should sign this. Here's an advance on the money. And he gives him like a bag of gold. Here's gold. Sign this thing.
Mhm.
Now, Thomas doesn't read it because it's not in English. It's not in a language he knows. It's not in German. It's in some old language, all handwritten on this like almost papyrus, right? It's just like he's got this thing and he's like scared of this old weird dude. He's like, sign these documents. It's the dirty thing. Give it here
So
a
good.
pen. And it's like fire, and he can't really see this guy, and he's been traveling for all these weeks, and he's like, "This is okay, yeah, sure, I guess. Like,
I
okay, I'll
promise I'm
sure,
not trying to kill you.
yeah,
I'm
yeah."
just
And he's
kidding.
like, okay, I guess I'll sign
Yeah.
it. So he signs it, and somehow in the signing cuts his hand. He cuts his thumb, and suddenly Count Orloff is right. That's the first take we have, and by me going. I know people are listening to this and it's a podcast, but I'm stretching my eyes really big and I'm making my mouth go, huh? You can imagine what my mouth looks like. You know other human beings. Um, right? So he
Vampire
just
vibes.
vampire
Vampire
vibes.
vibes.
And anyways, that's one of the earlier meetings. Now, I agree with you. I mean, why is he there so long? We can say
Hmm.
what is going on. It's almost like again, the frog who's in a pot of water and the water's getting more and more hot and you're like, "Why aren't you jumping out of the pot, frog?" But the frog has no concept and he's going to stay in the pot and die, right? Because he's
You're
just like it's getting a little weird. It's getting a little bit weirder. It's getting a little bit weird.
the metaphors are on fire today on this podcast. Erin's famous for this, by the way, but
I'm really letting this shine now.
no, you really are. But right now, yeah,
So I
it's
think
good.
that's why it's also so frustrating. But again, it goes back to the truth of what happens in a lot of different situations. He's in a
Hmm.
foreign country. He doesn't
Yeah.
know really where the heck he is. His horse has been stolen. It's not like he could just grab a horse and leave. He has
Hmm.
no idea where he's going. This guy he was sent here for his job, he needs to kind of finish the job. He's thinking, okay, he's not allowing himself to open up to see how far off the coastline he is at this point, right? He's still, and I think a lot
He's
of
like,
us do
maybe
this.
it's me. Maybe
Yeah,
it's me.
maybe it's gonna be okay. Maybe it's gonna
It's
be okay.
it's not the
Like,
gross, dead, dried out worm
yeah,
creature.
this
Maybe
husk of a
it's me.
human. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. Like, it's gonna, maybe this is normal. It's a country I've never been to. Maybe
Yeah.
this is what people are like
Maybe
here.
I'm missing something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so often, when people are feeling really weirded out, and especially, again, let's go back to his wife is very, very psychic and very intuitive.
Yeah.
But is that something she has said to him? No. Is that something she has said to anybody, really? No. Why? Because it's the 1800s. And if you're a woman and you say something like that, I see things that I shouldn't know. Well, guess where you're going to go? The lunatic bin. You're out
Yeah.
of here, baby.
Yeah,
You're
or they're
going to
gonna
an
light you
asylum.
right on fire.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
part of like the new experiments that they're doing on
Yeah.
people. Like, you're going to have horrible things happen to you. You're
Yeah.
gone. You're basically dead. So why would you ever tell anybody, especially as a woman? And this is during a time period where women, and this went on for a long time. I bet even today there's this happening. Somebody can say my wife's nuts, and the doctor will be like, "Okay, good. That's good for me. Great."
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy. So I think there is that way where he had to be at Count Orloff's for almost too long to just kind of show the level of, I don't want to say
Trust.
not getting it, but like,
Yeah, it is. It's like what's the word? Naivety. There's almost a
yeah,
naivety amongst men who are like playing business. They're like cosplaying like big deal business guy, like importance amongst each other. They'll dig themselves a giant hole just trying to get the big deal done or something like that. And
sure.
I'm lining that to a modern day scenario, but it's like, you know, it's a little bit of the jumping off the cliff. And his wife is the smart one, like, don't do this, please, like blah blah blah, ignore her, but
Right.
definitely hang out with the weird, slimy, rat infested, stake through the,
Yeah. Yeah.
heart.
And I mean, I would phrase it as a almost delirious obsession to trust. My business that I work for, these people are smart. They wouldn't do this to me. They wouldn't hurt
Mm-hmm.
me. He's young.
Yeah.
Like you said before, he's naive. So that's how
Yeah.
he gets into this whole situation.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
eventually, he escapes. He gets healed up by some nuns. Meanwhile, Ellen is just losing her mind. She is in it. She is really
Yeah.
in it. And Von Franz he's there for it. He's like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. I know you're a psychic. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. And the people she's staying with are getting more and more weirded out. Anne, who's the wife, is, holding the hand of Ellen, and she's like, "You're going to be okay. You're just really sensitive. You've
Mm-hmm.
always been this way. I know you have such a good heart and all this
They
stuff." And
have
her
a special connection with each other. Anne and Ellen are bonded. She really cares for her very deeply.
very, very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, her husband is like, she needs to get the F out of here. We got to figure
Yeah.
this out. I've
Yeah.
got little kids. This isn't making sense. Now weird stuff is happening. She's
Mm-hmm.
screaming all the time. It's not cool. This is really bad. This is,
Mm-hmm.
not okay. This is going to be trouble for us. And inevitably, that is what happens. So Count Orlok comes on his rat-infested ship. The man who had worked at the business that sent Thomas away goes nuts. He starts
Mm-hmm.
eating animals. He gets put into an insane asylum, and that's how they
Mm-hmm.
start to put the pieces together. Like, uh-oh, this guy sent Thomas away, and he's nuts. And they're trying to piece it together, but again, they can't really make total sense of it, except for Von Franz, he's totally on board, and he's like, "This is what's happening. I've never seen something like this.
Thank
I
God for Von Franz.
thank God for Von Franz, right?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so Thomas eventually returns, and it's right at the same time when the plague ship shows up. So he's
Mm-hmm.
living now with Ellen also at his friend's house because he's so beaten up and, totally looks nothing, a shadow of himself, of his former
Hmm.
self. He's still in the mend. So his friends are like, okay, well, at least he's here. And so we'll let them get better until the husband is like, it's enough. They have to leave, get out of here. And so he
Hmm.
kicks them out.
Hmm.
And right when that happens and they go back to their own home is when things really kind of heat up and go from there. Now, I think we should maybe end with the recap of the plot at that point because I don't want to give
Yeah.
away the whole film. But
Yeah.
I feel like if you've seen one vampire film, you probably have a guess of how things end. I absolutely loved this film. I
Yeah.
loved it. I thought the cinematography was absolutely gorgeous. I
Hmm.
feel Lily Rose did an incredible job as an
Yeah.
actor. Incredible.
Hmm.
William Dafoe, always really fun to watch.
Love him.
And, I guess to me, um, now last week I gave, not last week, but our last film review, I gave my vinyl record rating before you did. And you said
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
want to do that anymore
Yeah.
because then you
Yeah.
change yours. So
Yeah.
let's,
Let me just, before we give our vinyl record ratings,
sure.
okay?
Oh, should we even talk? We didn't even talk about who plays Count Orlok, which is Bill Skarsgård. And if you know Bill Skarsgård,
Wild.
he comes from, yeah, he's a Swedish actor. He comes from an
Yeah.
acting family. He actually played Pennywise in the film It. He's
What?
been
I didn't
on
even know that.
yeah, totally. He's been on a lot of shows and films. He was on Hemlock Grove, which if you've watched that, it's about like werewolves and stuff. It's a very fun show that lasted a couple seasons, 2013 to 2015. He was on
Yeah.
Castle Rock, 2018 to 2019, and he was in The Barbarian and now Nosferatu as well as It and It
Mm.
Chapter 2 as Pennywise. So this is a guy who he's tall, he's Swedish, and he has zero problem jumping in and saying, "Yeah, I'll be the scary monster. Sure, put the
Yeah.
makeup on me. Like, I'm a very good looking guy, but who cares? Like, I don't need to
Yeah.
be the good looking guy in the film. I want to be the fun." That's how I imagine his character to be is like, let me be the fun monster. Let me, have that. Those are the parts to me as an actor that always seem so fun to play.
You just imagine somebody inside their costume or like practicing their lines at home, like, how
Yeah.
am I going to do this monster or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Totally.
fun. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like there's so many places you can go with it, and everyone loves to watch a bad guy.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to watch a bad guy be a bad guy because
Oh, totally.
if you do a bad guy right, you totally forget who's like, I didn't even ask myself who was playing Orlok. Isn't that funny? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, so if they're doing a good job, you forget that it's the actor playing that.
I mean, he did all this stuff that really added to it too, just like the breathing that Count Orlok would do. It's like,
Oh, yeah. That was the worst part for me. Okay, so let me get back to this.
walking around doing that. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
tell me.
Okay. So it's hard for me to rate this film correctly because, as we all know, we discussed the last episode. I have a lot of
Yep.
trouble with blood. I have a lot of trouble with, like, I'm also a little bit like hypersensitive to breathing. Like, I don't like mouth breathers. You know
Oh
what I mean?
gosh.
No, it's
Okay.
not that I don't like them. It's just that I notice these small things and viscerally distracted by them.
Hmm.
So, uh, in that way, this monster was very monster-like to me. So,
Hmm.
all the things that impressed me about this movie are also things that made it difficult for me to watch the whole entire time. On top of that, there's nothing I like less than a man who calls a woman crazy over and over and over and over
Right.
again. It's a fable. This is a fable,
Yep.
essentially. Vampire
Yep.
movies are fables.
Yep.
And
Yeah, you
I
could
would
even say
argue,
folklore. Yeah.
yeah, I would argue that Ellen is the hero of the story, like hands down.
Absolutely.
I just hate when the hero doesn't win. So it's hard to say without without a spoiler alert, but
Yeah.
so what I will say before we give these final record ratings is
Sure.
that while it was really difficult for me to watch,
Yes.
I seriously looked down often. That is makes a movie hard to watch. Do you know what I mean? If you're having to
Yes.
look
No,
away.
I understand.
What I did love about this was, I mean, it was an artistic masterpiece. I feel like the cinematography, Robert
Mhm.
Eggers is a true photographer. These shots, they looked a lot like they reminded me of fashion photography in the sense
Yeah.
that there was a lot of stills. It
Yeah.
was not a ton of moving shots. I mean, couldn't be more opposite from Wicked and some of those
Right.
like panning shots where, just a lot of action. These are a lot of stills, like almost like just beautiful old photography. I could imagine him setting them up, putting the actors in their places, just like really thoughtful. It felt like almost like fashion films, if you
Yeah,
have ever,
totally.
yeah, seen some of that stuff where they'll do like a short fashion film to that has like a bit, it's almost like a short film that has a bit of a story to it. So
Yeah.
it was like a bunch of those put together, just very, very artistic, very expressionistic, right? So it's like
Yes. A
we're
beautiful
dealing
nod to the expressionism of German that happened in Germany. Yeah.
absolutely. And then on top of it, it's the whole movie itself is abstract. So like if you hadn't seen Dracula, if you hadn't seen Nosferatu, me, you know what I mean? I hadn't seen
Hmm.
either of those things. The story wasn't totally fully obvious to me. I had to like really go back and ask myself, is that really happening? It's purposefully that way, where there's this like thin line, thin veil between reality and not reality. You're constantly asking yourself, is wait, did that actually happen or did it not happen? Because the characters are also asking themselves these questions.
Right.
And
Which I mean,
so,
you could say is very common in horror movies in general, right? When
yeah,
horrible things are happening and the people are like, did I really see that? Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's true. I guess that's very true. But right before we started the podcast, I said, so I was just supposed to like suspend reality. And Aaron was like, well, yeah, like every horror movie. But I meant on behalf of the characters. Like, when was I supposed to? I don't know. I just kept trying to like wrap my head around all the sort of visions everyone was having. And
Okay.
that being said, it was gorgeous. The cinematography alone
Yeah.
pops it above 6 for me. I'm gonna give it like a 7.
Okay.
Are you higher than 7?
I am higher than seven, but I think
Great.
it's in my wheelhouse. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit, I
Yeah.
think, I thought there were some beautiful nods to past very popular vampire films.
Mhm.
I felt like it didn't go over the top as much as some things have in the past. I think there's always this chance that something's going to go really campy, and that didn't really happen here.
No, it wasn't campy.
I really enjoyed it. I would watch it again. I think that it's a great film. I feel it should have actually, in some ways, some of the actors should have gotten more recognition and should have gotten at least like some kind of nomination. Lily Rose Depp did an incredible job. I think it's a hard role. I think
Mhm.
that she had to physically do so much and then emotionally do so much and
Mhm.
at the same time try to make it appear very realistic,
Yeah.
like this is like it has to still feel grounded.
Yeah.
And I thought for that reason it was great. I mean, the scene where she's talking to the husband, the best friend, and saying, "Why do you hate me? What did I ever do? Why do you hate me?" It had the right timbre to me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
didn't, it felt genuine,
Yeah.
and how somebody would act and talk to somebody when when somebody doesn't like you. And if
Yeah.
it's somebody who's close, they're married to your best friend, you're going to be like, well, I don't get it. Like we're with each other all the time. So I thought there was a lot of different ways that she kind of hit some really nice highs in the film. I really liked it. I actually thought you were going to score it lower than you did.
Oh,
But I am going to give it like an 8.5.
okay. That's cool.
I'm giving it an 8.5. I think, I almost want to give it a 9, but I feel like
I
it's
just remembered something.
what?
The reason why I got confused a little bit
Okay. Okay.
because, and I don't like to say anything bad about any movie because like it's an extraordinary piece of work. Like this
Sure.
is an
Yeah.
extraordinary piece of work. People put
Yeah.
their whole lives
Totally. It
into
takes so much
movies.
time and yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that. I just explaining to you why I couldn't wrap my head around Orlok because I just remembered why. She says verbatim, he is my shame. She says
Yes.
he is a metaphor for my shame. Like, then all of a sudden, I go, wait, was he not here the whole time? Did he not exist the whole time? It's like their shame personified. I mean, it's kind of part of the story, right? It's
It
like,
is.
yeah,
And
but with,
again, I think it goes back to sexuality.
yeah,
So, for women and with vampire representation and stuff, vampires are seen as very sexual.
yeah,
And so her lusting and needing something and then
yeah,
being taken by him, which is the scene
yeah.
we see right in the very beginning.
Yeah, these possessions are nearly orgasmic, by the way.
Yes,
So if that
yes,
interests you, definitely go see the film.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's why she's uses that wording.
Hmm.
He is my shame. Because she broke not willingly,
Yeah.
but she broke that rule
Yeah.
of women need to be prim and proper and tied up. And later you see they imply she has a healthy sexuality. Let's put it that way
Yeah.
for a woman of that time.
They
It's
probably all had healthy
total.
sexualities.
Well, I mean, yeah,
If
in
they
certain
keep
ways,
bleeding
yeah.
them, they won't.
Yeah,
They'll
exactly.
be
Yeah, that's true.
exhausted. They'll be
But
exhausted.
so that's part of what that is it's talking about. That was talking about the sex.
Yeah, but
That's why he's the shame.
I guess when we're going back old times, it's like the two things were interchangeable. They thought of bad behavior as literal demons, not just like a metaphor for a bad thing. Do
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Somebody's doing something a certain way, they must be possessed. Someone,
Right.
yeah.
It's not just that the thing they're doing is bad, so they're like referring to it as like the devil's work or like something evil. Like
Right.
to this day, I notice that there are two kinds of people, people who take evil literally and people who take it figuratively. And the two things can be very confusing in a conversation. And there's a lot of history of this. And sometimes, I mean, sometime we can go back. I always bring up the Satanic Panic because it was this point in time in the 80s where the church commented on whether or not evil was like a physical entity or whether or not it was a metaphor for the behavior attached to how we might describe evil, which is like harm being done to others or indifference to harm being caused to others. And it kind of bounces between both. But the monster exists in the movie. He's not just like a figment of them everyone's imagination. So that's kind of where I got a little bit confused. But the other thing I will say is that in the beginning, you referred to her before her husband even leaves. Ellen is saying, please don't go. And you told our listeners about how she's having more and more prophetic dreams about marrying death.
Yes.
One of the lines that stays with me is how she says, I married death and it was the happiest I'd ever been.
Yeah.
And I was like, dark, but beautiful.
Yeah.
And so much foreshadowing in that line. And also giving up the fight to temptation. It's a, it's a
Yes.
discussion on giving up the fight to temptation and how satisfying some people might imagine that to be.
Yeah, and I mean I would even say in a way it's kind of a recognition, you know, a reckoning with the knowledge we don't live forever. And she has that feeling much sooner
Yeah.
because a vampire is an entity that is dead. It needs the life force of others to live. It does not have
Yeah.
its own life force.
Yeah.
So there's that recognition. Your life force is something you can lose.
Yeah.
And I agree, the writing, there's some lines that are really gorgeous and beautiful. Let me take a second to just say thank you. I know this was not easy. I realized later, when we were talking about you fainting from blood, this is definitely not the type of film you would have gone to see. Yeah, I mean, it had a lot of dark things, but I didn't think it was as dark as it could have been.
Yeah.
I really think they wrote a nice line there. I think they kept
Yeah.
it classy
Yeah. I will
for all
say
of the
that
talk of sex and death. I think they did a good job of like keeping it in the midway. I thought they did an
yeah, they
incredible,
did. Yeah.
you know, and I think that it's hard when you're coming back on a classic story to you have to be really careful because there's people who are going to expect it to be a certain way. And if it doesn't have certain elements, they'll be mad. And if it does have, you really have to be very mindful. And I thought they did a great job. I saw this with my husband and I was very surprised. Often we'll see a film and he'll be like, it was okay. Or he
He
has very
loved it.
different reactions. He loved it. I mean,
Wow.
we walked out when the credits rolled, we looked at each other and I was like, that was really good. He's like, absolutely. We know I love monster movies. I'm going to give it, when something has a monster, it's going to get a higher rating. And I feel like our audience is just going to understand. We
Yeah.
have different wheelhouses that if there's an element of something in certain films, you're going to like it. If there's elements of other things, I'm going to like it. Naturally,
Yeah.
that's going to buoy our points up of what
Yeah.
we give as a vinyl record rating.
Yeah.
Speaking of vinyl records, I want to talk about a vinyl record that I've been listening to a lot lately and I really love. You want to dive
Let's
into
hear it.
this? Okay,
Yeah,
hold
let's
on.
go for it.
It is now I bought this at the Princeton Record Rack,
Yeah,
which we went
girl,
to
I
and
was there.
we like, yep. And for people who watch this on YouTube, because we are on YouTube, you can watch our podcast on YouTube so you can get to see us and our beautiful little faces. I'm holding up a record. Alfred Hitchcock presents Music to be Murdered by. And
It's a
he's standing.
terrifying cover.
Yeah, he's on the cover. He's got a gun up to one temple and an axe on his other temple. Um,
Awful.
Awful. Now, one of the reasons what I love about this record and just these type of records in general, he talks on this and he talks about like murder and the importance of music and how it can make you feel certain ways. And he kind of goes through all of his use of it. I mean, on the back he wrote this letter and he says, "Gentle listener, this record in this envelope is called Music to be Murdered by, and as part of a campaign of mine to return to murder the dignity and charm it once had. Today there are few good, honest murderers left. Most of them are hoodlums or neurotic wrecks with no sense of style or form, and certainly no interest in good music. I realize there may be a few who whistle as they work, but that is hardly the same thing. This modern notion that all murders should be performed a cappella simply has no historical basis. You don't think Nero was fiddling for his own amusement, do you? Certainly not. These days, a murder is amusing for the onlookers and the murderer, but no one thinks of making things pleasant for the victim. He may be a tiresome bore, but he is still rather essential and is entitled to some consideration. Music, I feel, will heighten his appreciation and make his own murder the truly ennobling experience it should be. One warning, my disembodied voice will be heard occasionally, but I promise not to sing. After all, this record was designed to accompany murder, not to commit it. I sincerely hope you enjoy Music to be Murdered by, and I trust that before your demise, you have time to stagger out and buy some more albums for a few of your close enemies. With deepest sympathy, Alfred Hitchcock."
I love that. It's
I
such a
mean,
work.
come on, man.
That's such a work of art.
It,
It's you
yes.
might call it the precursor to the podcast kind of vibes. Some
Yeah.
talking, some music, and people used to comedy albums used to be huge on vinyl. And Alfred Hitchcock definitely had a sense of humor.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure. And what
especially
I love,
on that
totally, totally. And
letter.
I mean, I'm a real fan of like novelty records. And I
Hmm.
mean, I have this other record, which is somewhere in my stack. I can't even pull it out right now because it's
Yeah.
just going to take me too long. And it's a promotional record for a Brazilian airline. And it plays all of this music from different regions of Brazil as they pretend you're on the plane. It's amazing. I used to put that on the record play at dinner parties at my apartment all the time. And it was always such a hit because
That's great.
it's so novel. And so music in those ways was always used as like promotion,
Yep.
in that sense. And it was great music. It's like
Yeah.
Coco Cabana kind of stuff.
Oh, Cosby had a record, an album out. It made him
Yes.
highly famous. My parents' first date, my dad quoted all the Cosby jokes from the Cosby record to my mom on top of the car because she was actually talking about her ex-boyfriend who had dumped her and she's all upset about him. And so he was quoting the Cosby record to make her laugh. So
Oh.
yeah, I love a good talking record. I used to listen to Christmas records, the
Mhm.
Chipmunks Christmas story.
Classic, classic.
Classic. You
Yep.
could listen to whole musicals
Yep.
that
Yep.
they'd be like four parts of
Yeah.
vinyl. You know what I mean? You'd have like
Oh yeah,
four
totally. Yeah, yeah,
records in
yeah.
there. Novelty records are a fun kind of dive because
Totally.
you kind of don't know what you're gonna get.
And what's
Yeah.
great is when you go to, a record store and you're flipping through the vinyl, there's sometimes those bins of like dollar records.
Yeah.
And I love to just pick up a bunch because then it's like, let me listen to this. It's not a huge investment, it's $1, but you get to hear some new stuff that might be actually really cool.
I got
You
eight.
recently got some.
Yeah, from Princeton Record Exchange. So like spoiler alert, I I got 8 Linda Ronstadt records from the dollar bin.
Nice.
Yes. So I got 8 Linda Ronstadt classics because she is from Tucson.
Hmm.
Everything is named after the Ronstadts in Tucson because we're so very proud. She's in full polka dot
Ooh,
80s and look at her little red shoes on the back.
so cute.
This album is Get Close. It's definitely like an 80s kind of
Yeah,
album,
so
but
on the cover, we see Linda, and she's in this red polka dot dress, and behind her is the inverse of the colors. It's a white wall with red polka dots.
oh,
Cute.
I got Cheech and Chong in the desert.
Yeah, and their record looks like a van, the front of a VW Bug
Yeah, and
van,
it's in the
not the
shape of
bug.
a van. It's not a classic square. It's like literally
Yeah, it's
cut into
cool.
that shape. This is the Tramps, LaDuh. I guess I know what that is, but look at her dope tattoo. It's like
Wow. She's
ahead
got
of
this
its
crazy
time.
dragon. It's a woman standing in front of a red background. She's looking over her shoulder. She's got a crazy, beautiful red, multicolored dragon tattoo. Beautiful
Mhm.
flower in her hair.
The orchestra. Too hot for love, but two is spelled TWO. Like, what is
Love
that?
it.
Right? I don't even
Okay.
know.
That's cool.
Anyways,
Awesome.
fun way to end. Yeah, those are all from the dollar bin, and sometimes you just gotta go and to your local record rack and just clear
Check it
out some of
out.
that vinyl. Yeah, but I that was a good talk today. Look, I'm sorry I wasn't that excited about Nosferatu. I wanted to be more excited. I could. Everyone was telling me how romantic it was and all this stuff, and I was just so distracted by the goo and the heaving and the
But I think it's one of those things where if you're sensitive to something, you're really going to pick it up versus somebody who's not, like me.
yeah,
It just flies by me. I don't even,
yeah,
I see it and don't think twice about it. But
yeah,
that's fair enough. It's fair enough. So let's tell our listeners about some of the fun series that we're going to start doing in the future.
yeah,
Now, Emmy and I, when we started this podcast, we came up with this huge list of musicians and different films they were in. And a lot of these are like older films, and some of them are kind of newer, but we wanted to bring that idea back. And so every week we're going to be talking about a new movie, one episode, and then the next episode we're going to be talking about one of these classic films and the artist who is a part of the film.
yeah.
So let's tell our audience what we're going to be talking about on Friday.
Tremors,
Tremors, another monster movie.
starring
Sorry,
Reba.
Emmy.
That one doesn't bother me. It's dry, it's furry, it's a real worm. Like I can deal with all that.
So, Tremors, I'm just going to tell everybody, Tremors is one of my favorite movies. If you've
Yeah.
never seen Tremors, you got to rent that thing ASAP. You have wasted time in your life not having that film in your
It's
life,
starring
okay?
the great Reba McEntire. So we'll
Yes,
get into that next week, though.
yes. And
Yeah.
so Reba McEntire is the artist that we're going to be talking about and doing a deep dive into her career, how she got started, famous songs, famous albums. We're going to be talking about the film. And we're also going, you know who else is in that movie, Tremors? Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, six
Oh, yeah.
degrees, baby.
There's nothing not to like about Tremors, okay?
So you
So
better listen to some Kevin Bacon music so you can be in on the
that's
talk.
that's true. He's also a musician too. We could have,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
but
he's in a band with his brother. We'll get into that next week. We are so happy that you joined us today. And please take a minute to go rate this podcast if you've enjoyed it, 5 stars. And follow us on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, where Erin spends hours uploading our videos. And she'd really appreciate it if you'd go watch.
check it out, y'all. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks again. Thanks, Emmy. It's always fun to talk to you
I
and get
love
into
talking to
it.
you. Yeah. Okay.
All
Talk to you
right.
soon.
Bye.
Bye. 1, 2.